up, Greg?
Alright, we're back on YouTube.
Oh, geez.
You know it's ice cream.
Oh,
Oh, that was annoying.
what was it?
Just some dumb work bullshit.
Do you love some dumb work bullshit? Okay. Oh my god. I'm losing it here, Greg. The trailer parks. They're getting to me.
What's that?
So trailer park madness. Where you just like you keep driving around aimlessly. It's so much. Oh. Greg?
Sorry, I'm distracted right now. Oh, stupid driving.
I remember it.
I'm gonna tell you about it.
43. Shit. That's fine.
Alright, Julia, I gotta go.
What are you doing?
Probably gonna listen to LibriVox.
For what now?
Books and stuff.
No, I see. Well, you better then. Right.
Section 10 of Cities and Plain by Marcel Proust, translated by C.K. Scott Moncrief. This LibriVox recording.
Section 1 of Selected Poems. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer,
wouldn't it be great if you could read and manage your business mail from anywhere? Wish you had a professional business.
Section 14 of the Monomania by Emile Zola. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 14. Chapter 8. The train did not reach the Paris terminus before 10:40 at night. There had been a...
Section 1 of The Lost Valley and Other Stories by Algernon Blackwood. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Ben Tucker. The Lost Valley and Other Stories by Algernon Blackwood. The Lost Valley, Part 1. 1. Mark and Stephen, twins, were remarkable even of their kind. They were not so much one soul split in twain as two souls, fashioned in precisely the same mold. Their characters were almost identical. Tastes, hopes, fears, desires, everything. They even liked the same food, wore the same kinds of hats, ties, and suits. And strongest link of all, of course, disliked the same things too. At the age of 35, invariably liked the same woman. And when a certain type of girl appeared upon their horizon, they talked it over frankly, agreed it was impossible to separate, and together turned their backs upon her for a change of scene before she could endanger their peace. For their love for one another was unbounded, irresistible as a force of nature, tender beyond words, and their one keen terror was that they might one day be separated. To look at, even for twins, they were uncommonly alike. Even their eyes were similar, that gray-green of the sea that sometimes changes to blue, and at night becomes charged with shadow. And both the same strong aquiline noses, stern-lipped mouths, and joined, and at the same time the fine controlling will without which such a gift is apt to prove a source of weakness. Emotions, too, were real and living, not the sort that merely tickle the surface of the heart, but the sort that plow. Both had private means, yet both had studied medicine because it interested them. Mark specializing in diseases of eye and ear, Stephen in mental and nervous cases, and they carried on a select, even a distinguished practice in the same house in Wimpole Street, with their names on the brass plate thus: Dr. Mark Winters, Dr. Stephen Winters. In the summer of 1900, they went abroad together as usual for the months of July and August. It was their custom to explore successive ranges of mountains, collecting the folklore and natural history of the region into small volumes, neatly illustrated with Stephen's photographs. And this particular year they chose the Jura, that portion of it rather that lies between the Lac de Joux, Balme, and Fleurières. For obviously they could not exhaust a whole range in a single brief holiday. They explored it in sections year by year, and they invariably chose for their headquarters quiet, unfashionable places where there was less danger of meeting attractive people who might break in upon the happiness of their profound brotherly devotion, the incalculable, mystical devotion of twins. For abroad, you know, Mark would say, people have an insinuating way with them that is often hard to withstand. The chilly English reserve appears. Acquaintanceship becomes intimacy before one has time to wait. Exactly, Stephen added. The conventions that protect one at home suddenly wear thin, don't they? One becomes soft and open to attack, unexpected attack. They looked up and laughed, reading each other's thoughts like trained telepathists. What each meant was the dread that one should, after all, be taken and the other left by a woman. Though at our age, you know, one is almost immune, Mark observed, while Stephen smiling agreed philosophically. Or ought to be. Is, quoth Mark decisively. For by common consent, Mark played the role of the elder brother. His character, if anything, was a shade more practical, slightly more critical of life, perhaps, Stephen being ever more apt to accept without analysis, even without reflection. But Stephen had that richer heritage of dreams, which comes from an imagination so cleverly. Even this was only a division of labor, for each was equally interested in the occupation of the other, and they shared results in the long evenings when expeditions brought them back in time, smoking in the rickety wooden balcony, comparing notes, shaping chapters, and as two children. They brought the enthusiasm of boys to all they did, and they enjoyed the days apart almost as much as those they spent together. After separate expeditions, each invariably returned with surprises which awakened the other's interest, even amazement. Thus, the life of the foreign element in the hotels, unpicturesque in the daytime, noisy and overdressed at night, passed them by. The glimpses they caught as they passed these caravanserais, when gaieties were order of the evening, made them value their peaceful retreat among the skirts of the forest. They brought no evening dress with them, not even the smoking. The atmosphere of these huge hotels simply poisoned mountains, quoth Stephen. All that haunted feeling goes. Those people, a great marvel of scorn in his eyes, would be far happier in Trouville or deep, gambling, flirting with the rest. Feeling thus secure from that jealousy which lies so terribly close to the surface of the giant devotions, where the entire life depends upon exclusive possession, the brothers regarded with indifference the signs of this gayer world about them. In that throng there was no one who could introduce an element of danger into their lives. No woman, at least, either, though blood would be found there. For this thought must be emphasized, if not exaggerated. Certain incidents in the past from which only their strength of will had made escape possible proved the danger to be a real one. Usually, too, to some un-English woman, to wit, the Budapest adventure, or the incident in London of the grief curtains, first Mark's patient and then Stephen's. Neither of them made definite reference to the danger, though undoubtedly it was present in their minds more or less vividly whenever they came to a new place. The singular dream that one day a woman would carry off one and leave the other lonely. It was instinctive, probably just as the dread of the wolf is instinctive in the deer. The curious fact, though natural enough, was that each brother feared for the other and not for himself. Had anyone told Mark that someday he would marry, Mark would have shrugged his shoulders with a smile and replied, "No, but I'm awfully afraid Stephen may," and vice versa. 3. Then, out of a clear sky, the bolt fell upon Stephen, catching him utterly unawares, it sent him fairly reeling. For Stephen, even more than his brother, possessed that glorious yet fatal gift, common to poets and children, by which, out of a few insignificant details, the soul builds for itself a whole sweet heaven to dwell in. It was at the end of their first month, a month of unclouded happiness together. Since their exploration of the Abruzzi 2 years before, they had never enjoyed anything so much, and not a soul had come to disturb their privacy. Plans were being mooted for moving their headquarters some miles farther towards the Val de Travers and the Croix de Vannes. Only the day of departure, indeed, remained to be fixed, when Stephen, coming home from an afternoon of photography alone, saw, with bewildering and arresting suddenness, a face, and with the effect of a blow full upon the heart, it literally struck him. How such a thing can come upon a strong man, a man of balanced mind, healthy nerves and spirit, and in a single moment change his serenity into a state of feverish and passionate desire for possession, is a mystery that lies too deep for philosophy or science to explain. It turned him dizzy with a sudden and tempestuous delight, a veritable sickness of the soul, wondrous sweet as it was deadly. Rare enough, of course, such instances may be, but that they happen is undeniable. He was making his way home in the dusk somewhat wearily. The sun had already dipped below the horizon of France behind him. Across the open country that stretched away to the distant mountains of the Rhone Valley, the moonlight climbed with wings of ghostly radiance that fanned their way into the cliffs and vineyards of the Drôme all about him. A little apart from the throng of dressy folk who sat there in the glitter of the electric light, the space of melancholy dark splendor rose closer before his eyes, all soft and wondrous, as though the beauty of the night, of forest, stars, and moonrise, had dropped down and focused itself within the compass of a single human countenance. Framed within a corner pane of the big windows, peering sideways into the darkness, the vision of this girl not 20 feet from where he stood produced upon him a shock of the most convincing delight he had ever known. It was almost as though he saw someone who had dropped down among all these hotel people from another world, and from another world, in a sense, she undoubtedly was, for her face held in it nothing that belonged to the European countries he knew. She was of the East. The magic of other suns swept into his soul with a vision. The pageantry of other skies flashed brilliantly and was gone. Torches flamed in the recesses